they have mismanaged their bankruptcy. They're insolvent. It's going through the Federal Reserve. It's going through the Office of the Comptroller. It's going back through the U.S. Treasury, and it's going back to this bankruptcy that they can do whatever they want to do. But they're mismanaging the insolvency of the Chapter 11 bankruptcy that they did in 12 years before the Federal Reserve. Excuse me, which one was it?
The UN.
Yeah, thank you, Harvey.
Well,
the UN.
All right, now, people, let's throw this into you as another zinger into this thing. Stop and think here. All right, we were under a state of an emergency. Under the state of emergency, the Constitution is suspended. So are public offices, because it now comes under military law, because we've been under military law since 1867. If we've been under military law, Roosevelt could not have declared a state of emergency under a proclamation, under executive order, and then went back to Congress and says, hey, cover my butt. I need a banking act to cover my executive order because we're under a state of an emergency.
Well, Rod, he was counting on the fact that people wouldn't remember back to 1867, and he was right.
Wrong. You got people like me and EJ that I read papers that are back to 1199, and he's read back further than that.
I know. But what I'm saying is the average Joe doesn't know.
But even the average Joe, if you understand, if he called a state of an emergency, he suspended Congress. You can't suspend Congress, do a executive order, and then go to Congress and say, hey, quick, make me a bill after I declared it a state of emergency.
Well, yeah, but Rod, also you can't suspend Congress when Congress has already been suspended back in 1867.
That's exactly right.
Suspend Congress if they're the trustees.
And how can they be the trustees if they're a suspended entity?
Well, they're in suspended animation then, aren't they?
I would guess so.
Well,
so what's behind the curtain, Toto?
All right, what should have been is that Congress should have created the Emergency Banking Act first and then went to Roosevelt and says, hey, we need an executive order. That isn't how they did it. They did it backwards.
Right, but they also did it without authorization.
That's exactly right.
So, I mean, they're compounding their mistakes.
Well, what it's doing is it's showing the pattern of intentional fraud with forethought and malice, which takes us back to George Scherf, who is really George Bush, which goes back to Prescott Bush, and their intentions were to overthrow the constitutional form of the government through theft of technology, which is the worldwide wireless system that we're talking on right now, and they're transmitting all of your banking. I watched a special on TV last night called American Greed, and it was a guy who was in jail for hacking into computers, and you should have seen the bank credit card numbers. There was hundreds of them per second just flickering on the screen, and he was just snatching in on people's Wi-Fi and stealing credit cards. This is your technology that they're transmitting all of your banking through. Y'all got to look into what is Scantron and your checks and the banks. They are stealing the air that you're breathing and making money on it. It is all theft of technology using threat, intimidation, what's the other one? Murder, because we're going back to the Titanic. We're going back to several other people. Look at Dick Cheney. How many of you would voluntarily go on a hunting expedition with Dick Cheney?
Not after what I saw him do.
Well, that was with a judge. Now, that immediately got hushed up. Okay? Why? My guess is, well, you got lucky the first time. But if you open up your mouth, I'm going to get the other side of your face. Okay? No, I don't think any one of you would want to go hunting with Dick Cheney.
All right, this goes in with what we were sitting here saying, no obligation to the people. This goes into a contract breach. This goes into taxpayers' fraud. It goes into deception.
obtaining money under false pretenses, breach of contract, and theft by deception. Those three, they will not be able to wipe that glue off. They can't get that off. And then you've got
it's time to Jeanette, I think it's time to hit the reset button.
What do you mean?
On the whole thing. I mean, when Rod tonight had to go in and mute the call, he said, all right, let me see. It's really developing into a CF. Let me hit the mute thing. Okay, good. And then he brought the other people in. But this is a CF which is way beyond repair.
Yes, it is.
Yes. And when people ask me, well, Jeanette, what is the cure? What is the answer? There's only one answer, folks, and that's the second coming of Christ. And I mean that wholeheartedly, in that what they have done, and this goes back to the Vatican, because he's named himself a vicar of Jesus Christ. I own it all, really. Because when you look up the definition of vicar, which I put out there on the web for you, and it's in the dictionary, and I took it right out of the Webster's dictionary. It is the Pope, and it's evil, it's vicious, it's lying, it's deception, it's everything that is vile is vicar. Well, the Pope voluntarily is a self-proclaimed vicar of Jesus Christ. Folks, in my book, that makes him the Antichrist. Okay, so that means that we're getting very close to what EJ has addressed, and this goes back to the Jews and who's doing it. Their main intent is to kill us all. Well, I know for a fact a female she happens to be black. She's now a Jehovah's Witness, but previously a Muslim. And this woman told me to my face that the Muslims' belief is to kill all of the whites. Now, that kind of shocked me. Now, how much of that is true, I don't know, but that came directly, verbatim, from her mouth to my face. The Muslim intended to kill all the whites. Well, let's take that back to what EJ has researched. It's the Khazar Jews' intent is to kill everybody, So, again, how can we put a Band-Aid on a metastasized cancer that has infected every cell of this planet? None of us can fix that. It's beyond human repair. Only the Creator that created all of the universe, all that is in the universe, and is the God of Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham, and the father of Messiah, is the only one that can correct this problem. All he's doing is using us as the source to round them up, put them in the paddock, make sure that we have enough time that we don't miss any, so that when he comes, they're gone. Because we don't have to lift a finger. It's not our job. Our job is to expose the fraud, the corruption, all of the evil people that have caused havoc, harmed us, injured us, stolen from us, damaged our children. Oh, and by the way, the Vatican did make a speech last week. It was supposed to be on that he's not going to allow any money laundering, but I put out a little nasty paper the day before, so it would have looked like, oops, we made a boo-boo, we better clean up our mess. So we made a speech instead that the Vatican has made it clear it is not an absolute sin to commit pedophilia.
I saw that. That was funny.
Now, you tell that to God, because when you injure a child, in God's eyes, that's like putting your finger on the eyeball of God.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
No, and you tell a woman, a very devout Catholic woman, mother of a child, who is destroyed for life because a Catholic priest sodomized her son, and that boy will never be the same. But the Vatican is saying, we don't find it an absolute sin in our eyes, and it's okay, because since 1992, pedophilia has been the norm.
Okay, let's get back on point. I've got several people who like to ask some questions on what we've talked about here tonight, and it's already 11 o'clock. Let me bring these people in, and we will get through some of this, and because they may have some answers of what we've been explaining here tonight. Al, go ahead.
Two things here. I've been pushed for so long here. One, we are bankers under the definition of banker in the Black Law's Dictionary. That way we can deal with Federal Reserve notes. However, we are not licensed by the Federal Reserve to do so. So I assume they could take our federal notes away from us anytime they want to. The other thing is, did the League of Nations, was it existing in 1933, or had it been dissolved prior to 1933?
I think it had been dissolved at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. South Florida. Go ahead, South Florida.
Yeah, how you doing tonight?
Good.
Happy New Year for all those who partake. I'm, looking at the order for settlement and all, and with the birth certificate that we have for relief and remedy, and when we send the birth certificate, do we take a copy of all the documents and send them to the state comptroller or the comptroller for the U.S. for that region? Or should we send it to Dallas, the one in Dallas? What do you think?
The national comptroller is in Houston, Texas, ironically.
So we should send it to Houston with a copy of everything. Is that how we should do it?
Well, I don't know what it is that you're asking, but I can tell you that the comptroller is in Houston, Texas.
The comptroller for the U.S.
Right.
Well, I'm talking about the order for the settlement that we have in the documents.
Right.
We got documents for that. Maybe Harv, you got a better.
No, just make sure that's a state-sanctioned birth certificate, the state version, not something you got from the hospital, not something you got from the doctor.
Right, and then who would we send that paperwork to so they don't, the county court is really corrupt and all in this one gentleman's situation, and probably in mine too when I get there. So I don't want them running off my birth certificate. And
well, no, you can always get copies from the state. They cost about $18 a piece. Yeah, you got to invest that. So Rod, where should he be sending all that stuff to?
Okay. Part of this is what we're trying to get into, what we're trying to find out. One, you got to put it into the court because the judge is trustee.
Right, and they did say that.
All right, and you also put it into the comptroller. You notify him. Now, go ahead with what Jeanette has found out. Put it into your state, which is wherever you're at, and file it into the federal comptroller, which is in Texas.
Okay, so just file it. Where should we send the state, certified birth certificate? We don't want to send them a whole bunch of them, or one to the clerk, one to the judge, one to the all over the place. We send a copy to all the rest of them, but the one so we can get settlement and closure on the case. Where should we send that?
You're looking at what would be the federal comptroller, from what it says in the statute at large, comptroller currency. Because this falls under the United States Treasury, you would probably send this off to Texas.
All right, hey Jeanette, do you have the address for the comptroller in Texas, or how would we get that? Just Google that, or what?
I have it somewhere in my files, and I got that because making a statement to the FINRA and to the Office of Thrift Supervision, which is over the federal banks. They are the ones that responded back to me, telling me that I need to send my paperwork to the comptroller, and they gave me all of the address. If you give me a few minutes, I'll see if I can find it for you.
Okay.
Name. I appreciate that so much. You'd save people from going off to the state mental hospital and being, mentally psychotropically lobotomized.
Yeah.
What is it? Thank you, Jeanette.
I want to make something very clear to all of you people out here. All right, that on the internet, when you punch in James Traficant bankruptcy, that document, like I said, the first paragraph, I had someone sent me over out of the congressional record that H1303, that top paragraph was in that congressional record. Anything below that, I cannot sit here and say, oh, yes, it is. I can't say that. What we need someone to go into the Library of Congress, whether it's in D.C. or go into a library. We need someone to go into the Library of Congress, whether it's in D.C. or go into a library that has the congressional records and documentation. We need to pull that whole statement, because if that whole statement is in the congressional records, he does get into the birth certificate. And it does explain that the birth certificate makes you, John Doe, Jane Doe, John Q. Public, it makes you the beneficiary. And that birth certificate was the source of borrowing money. I need that statement. If it was in the record, I need it so we can post it. Because that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is the part